Bullies mock a new black student, unaware she's a boxer. Have you ever thought about how one humiliating moment can transform into an unforgettable lesson? This is the story of Maya, a 16-year-old girl who not only endured taunts at her new school, but also confronted the deep-seated prejudice of a group of bullies who picked the wrong target. What they didn't realize was that beneath her quiet smile and composed demeanor hid a state boxing champion, ready to deliver a lesson that would reshape the school's culture forever. Prepare for a story of bravery, of standing up against injustice, one that will challenge your assumptions about judging people by appearances. Maya stepped through the gates of Hamilton High that September morning with her heart pounding. It was her first day after relocating to the city, and she was already familiar with that look. The whispers started the moment she entered the main hallway, her dark skin standing out in a sea of pale faces that stared with curiosity, and something else she knew all too well. Her neatly styled dreadlocks and spotless uniform couldn't shield her from the judgmental glares that followed her every step. At the back of the classroom, Brad and his friends didn't even try to hide their snickering. They were the stereotypical popular crowd, soccer stars, wealthy, and infamous for tormenting new students. Their designer clothes and pricey sneakers were like an invisible armor of privilege they wore proudly. Maya ignored them, just as her mother always taught her. "Keep your head high and stay focused on your goals," she would say. What no one knew was that for the past 8 years, while other girls took ballet or played volleyball, Maya had poured every spare moment into boxing. She turned every challenge into motivation to grow stronger. Her hands, hidden under the sleeves of her oversized hoodie, bore the calluses of countless hours hitting the punching bag. Her slim arms concealed muscles shaped by years of grueling training. Every insult she heard now felt like a punch she had already learned to dodge in the ring. You don't need to respond to everything, she had learned. Sometimes the strongest move is waiting for the right moment. Her eyes, though pretending not to notice the jeers, had stared down opponents twice her size, and won. During the break, Brad and his 4 friends decided it was time to welcome the new girl. They strutted through the corridors like they owned the place, shoving aside smaller students as they passed. Maya was placing her books into her locker when she sensed them approaching. The overpowering scent of expensive cologne announced their presence even before Brad spoke. "Hey, new girl," Brad called, his tone dripping with mockery. "I think you're at the wrong school. The public one's across town." The hallway fell into silence. Some students paused to watch, while others turned away, too ashamed or too scared to intervene. Maya felt dozens of eyes on her, some full of pity, others eagerly waiting to see what would happen next. She closed her locker slowly, inhaling deeply, just as she did before every match. She had known this moment would come, it always did. The only question was how she would respond this time. "What, too scared to answer?" Brad prodded, stepping closer. "Maybe she doesn't speak our language," another bully chimed in, earning laughter from the group. Maya's blood simmered, but she stayed composed. Years in the ring had taught her that real strength meant knowing when to fight. But Brad wasn't satisfied with her silence. In one quick motion, he smacked the books from her hands, scattering them across the floor. "Oops," he said, feigning innocence. "Looks like you dropped something." The hallway erupted in uneasy laughter. What happened next would leave everyone in that corridor speechless, and change the school's atmosphere for good. To see how Maya responded and discover the powerful twist in this tale, keep watching. If you've ever experienced something similar, or know someone who has faced discrimination at school, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. This story proves that true strength often comes from the least expected places, and that we should never judge a book by its cover, or a fighter by her silence. Maya bent down slowly to gather her scattered books, every move precise, like she was analyzing an opponent in the ring. Brad's smug grin widened, mistaking her calm for surrender. He couldn't tell he was misreading her patience as weakness, a mistake many had already paid for in the ring. "Let me help you," Brad said sarcastically, nudging one of her books away with his foot. The hallway remained tensely quiet, broken only by a few anxious giggles echoing off the walls. Among the onlookers, a girl named Lena watched the scene unfold, her hands tightly gripping the strap of her backpack. backpack strap clenched tightly, Maya continued silently, gathering her things one by one. Each movement was precise and deliberate, like the ritual she always performed before stepping into the ring. Her thoughts drifted to the words of her coach. True strength isn't about how much power you hold, but knowing the exact moment to use it. Hey, Brad's friend Jack cut in, maybe we should show her where the library is, assuming she can read. Laughter echoed, and encouraged by the crowd, Brad decided to escalate things. He stepped in closer, violating Maya's personal space. You know, he began, his voice dripping with malice, people like you should feel lucky to even be allowed to study here. My dad's one of the school's principals, and he always says some changes are just inevitable. The hallway grew even more tense, his blatant prejudice settling over the students like a heavy fog. Maya slowly rose to her feet, books now neatly stacked in her arms. Her eyes locked with Brad's for the first time, and the intensity in her gaze made his confident smirk flicker. People like me? She asked, her voice steady and unwavering. Yeah, Brad said, regaining his composure and stepping forward. People who don't belong here. He reached out to shove her shoulder, but his hand froze mid-motion, caught in a firm grip. Time seemed to pause in the hallway. Maya had stopped his arm with the kind of accuracy that only years of discipline could teach. Her stance shifted subtly, her feet planted at the perfect distance, body angled just right. Any trained fighter would recognize the posture instantly. Don't touch me, Maya said, her voice low but commanding. Brad yanked his arm back, startled by the strength in her grasp. For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. What do you think you're doing? He asked, trying to hold his ground, though his voice quivered slightly. His friends glanced at one another, uneasy, sensing the shift in the room. Maya stepped forward, and Brad instinctively stepped away. You talked about people who don't belong here, she said, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. But do you know what truly doesn't belong anywhere? Prejudice and bullying. The bell rang suddenly, making everyone jump, but no one moved. All eyes were locked on the scene unfolding before them. Realizing he was losing control, Brad did the only thing he could think of. He pushed harder. And what are you gonna do about it? He sneered, puffing his chest in a show of fake bravado. Gonna run crying to the school board? Or maybe call your ghetto friends? That's when Maya smiled. A calm, confident smile that made Brad instinctively take another step back. No, she replied smoothly. I'm going to show you exactly what 8 years of boxing teaches you about respect. Whispers swept through the hallway. Brad turned pale, but at this point, it was too late to retreat. The confrontation that followed would permanently shift the school's balance of power. No one who witnessed that moment would ever forget the day they underestimated the quiet new girl. What happened next happened so quickly, some students swore they missed it when they blinked. In a last-ditch effort to look tough, Brad lunged forward with a awkward shove. Maya moved with liquid grace, sidestepping the clumsy attack with a smoothness honed over years of practice. The maneuver resembled those viral clips of Muhammad Ali, the fluid footwork that made opponents look slow and foolish. Last chance, Maya warned, now fully in fighting stance, her fists raised in a textbook-perfect guard. The calluses on her hands, evidence of countless hours on the heavy bag, were now visible to everyone. Apologize and leave. A circle of students had gathered around them, phones already raised, ready to capture every second. The air felt electrified, every breath audible in the eerie silence of the hallway. Brad let out a shaky laugh, the kind that tries to hide fear, but only exposes it. You really think you can? Before he could finish, Maya delivered a perfect jab that stopped just inches from his face. The wind from the strike rustled his perfectly styled hair. Brad stumbled backward, tripping over his own feet. His fear now unmistakable, the smug mask he wore completely shattered. 8 years of boxing, Maya said, still in position, her body radiating the kind of confidence forged through hundreds of rounds, through wins, losses, and relentless discipline. Junior state champion for the last 3. You still want to test your luck? Her voice stayed calm and composed, but carried a weight that silenced the entire hallway. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioning above. Jack, the first to regain his voice, grabbed Brad's arm, pulling him back. Sweat had begun to drip down Brad's forehead, soaking into the collar of his designer shirt. "Dude, let's go," Jack muttered. "She's like a pro fighter." But Brad stood frozen, his reign as the school's feared bully collapsing in real time. Years of intimidation shattered in a matter of moments. You can't hit me," he stammered, voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. "And my dad's the principal, you'll be expelled." His words echoed through the hallway, more desperate plea than warning. She lowered her fists and offered a quiet smile, the kind of smile that comes only from someone who truly knows their own worth. "Exactly. And that's why you're going to listen to me now." She took a step closer, and this time Brad didn't move. Fear rooted him to the floor. "I could humiliate you right here, in front of everyone. It would be easy," she said. "But you know what's harder? Choosing not to fight when you know you can." The corridor remained silent, every student absorbing her words as though they were witnessing a historic moment, and in many ways they were. Maya continued, "Boxing didn't just teach me how to throw punches. It taught me discipline, respect, and most importantly, when not to use my strength. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to stop bullying people, not just me, but everyone in this school." Lena, who had been silently observing since the beginning, felt something stir deep inside her. Years of staying silent in the face of injustice finally gave way to a voice she didn't know she still had. She stepped forward, her hands trembling, but her voice steady. "She's right, Brad. No more bullying, no more prejudice. We're done being afraid." Murmurs of agreement began to ripple through the corridor, a wave of collective bravery gaining momentum. Brad looked around, realizing he wasn't just losing an argument, he was losing all the control he'd ever had. The empire of fear he'd carefully built was collapsing around him. His friends backed away, leaving him isolated at the center of the circle, face to face with Maya. The bully who once believed himself untouchable was finally being forced to taste his own medicine. "And what if I don't stop?" he tried again, a last feeble provocation, but the arrogance had drained from his voice. It sounded hollow, uncertain, pathetic, in the stillness of the hallway. Maya stepped closer and spoke in a low tone only he could hear, each word heavy with meaning. "Then next time, I won't stop the punch." With that, she turned, picked up her backpack, and calmly walked toward class, leaving Brad alone to confront the consequences of his actions for the first time. As she passed, students parted to make way, some smiling, others still processing what they had just witnessed. Lena caught up to her, her eyes shining with admiration. "That was incredible," she said breathlessly. "How did you stay so calm? How did you become so strong?" Maya smiled, adjusting the strap of her backpack as the rough texture of her calluses brushed the fabric. "Years of learning that real strength isn't about how many punches you can throw, but how many you choose not to." That afternoon marked a turning point in the history of Hamilton High. Word of Maya and Brad's confrontation spread like wildfire, first through whispered retellings in hallways, then across social media. Clips of Maya blocking Brad's shove and delivering a flawless jab circulated rapidly, accompanied by captions like, "Bully meets his kryptonite," and, "When prejudice takes a punch of reality." In the days that followed, subtle changes began to emerge. Maya noticed the way people looked at her had shifted. Their stares no longer carried judgment or pity, but respect. At lunch, Lena invited her to sit at her table, and before long, other girls joined in. "Do you train every day?" asked Sarah, a new friend, as they passed a tray of fries. Maya grinned, wiping her hands on a napkin. 6 days a week, 3 hours a day. I started after I got bullied at my old school. My dad took me to the gym and said I needed to learn how to defend myself." "And now you're a state champion?" Lena added, still in awe. Maya shrugged modestly, though her smile was sincere. "Boxing taught me more than self-defense. It taught me perseverance, how to fight for my dreams, and to never let anyone else decide who I am." Meanwhile, Brad drifted through the school like a ghost of his former self. The aura of intimidation he once wore had completely vanished. His old friends slowly distanced themselves, ashamed of having been part of his past. One week after the incident, in history class, Brad shocked everyone by raising his hand during a discussion on civil rights. I want to apologize, he said, voice trembling slightly. Not just to Maya, but to everyone I ever bullied. What happened made me realize how wrong I was. The silence that followed was profound. Maya, seated a few desks away, watched him quietly. My father always said that power meant controlling others through fear, Brad continued, regret thick in his words. But Maya showed me that real power is knowing when not to use it. I'd never been humiliated before, and that made me understand how I made others feel. Their teacher, Mrs. Martinez, smiled softly. Thank you for your honesty, Brad. Acknowledging our mistakes is the first step toward becoming better. Maya felt her throat tighten, her coach's words echoing in her mind. Sometimes the greatest victory is turning an enemy into an ally. After class, Brad waited for her in the hallway. His eyes were red as though he'd been crying. I'm really sorry, he said, extending a hand. You could have humiliated me, you could have hurt me, and you would have been right. But instead, you chose to teach me something better. Maya took his hand and gave it a firm squeeze, the tension of years of conflict dissolving in that single gesture. We all will deserve a second chance, she replied. It's what we do with it that matters. Over the following weeks, Hamilton High began to change. Brad launched an anti-bullying group, using his former status to advocate for compassion and growth. Maya started teaching basic self-defense after school, helping students not just to protect themselves, but to believe in their own strength. You know what's really amazing? Lena asked one day as they watched students laughing and mingling freely on the school lawn. You didn't just stand up to the bully, you changed the whole school. Maya smiled as she observed the diverse, united crowd before her, where once there had been separation and fear. That's why we fight, she said, not to hurt, but to transform, not to divide, but to bring people together. Every punch I threw at that bag, every hour I spent training, every match I fought, it was all preparing me not to hurt people, but to make a difference. Maya's story reminds us that sometimes, to inspire others, we first have to face our own fears. That real strength isn't measured by how many we knock down, but by how many we lift up. And that real change begins when we use our power not to dominate, but to heal. If this story moved you, or if you know someone who needs to hear this message, share it with them. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for more stories that uplift and empower. And tell us in the comments, have you ever faced a moment where you used your strength to uplift instead of hurt? Your story could be the spark that lights someone else's way.